Welcome, everyone. We are here today to offer a witnessing space to refugees, human beings, young men from Syria. And we're very grateful for their presence. And these young men have come to Germany and they are fluent in German, pretty much from what I could hear. But they are not so fluent in English. So, on top of the witnessing space for Syrian refugees, today we have a very special offer for all of you who are English speakers, because many of you are used to having most calls offered in your language. So, today you have the very special opportunity to experience how it is for all those who are usually in the translation rooms, because we will ask you today to move into the translation option. And the call today will be offered in German so that our friends Ibrahim and Muawi are most comfortable to speak in a language that they can speak.
Right. Having said that, I would like to cordially invite you to this space today. And these spaces that we open yesterday, today, and tomorrow are all part of a project of the European Union, where the Pocket Project is a partner together with the University of Witten in Germany and other partner organizations in Greece, Italy, Croatia, and Germany. Or did I leave anyone out? Oh, Turkey, of course. Turkey. And yes, we are collaborating in creating a platform that we will soon be sharing with you, where the tools of global social witnessing are being represented. And we also offer a space relating to the streams of refugees, of migration in Europe, and an intercultural society that we want to accompany and give a witnessing space to. The conflict in Syria, and I think we will soon hear more by Ibrahim and Mowi. They will tell us more about how and when this conflict started. As far as we know, it began in 2011 when the first uprisings against the government started in Syria, which evolved into a civil war of the government against its own people, and it has led to the world's largest refugee crisis in our time. More than half of the Syrian population, which is 22 millions, have since left Syria. That's about 13 million people. And many of the displaced Syrians have, during, before and after their flight, gone through trauma, violence, and distress. And about 1 million of these Syrian people are meanwhile residing in Europe, many of them in Turkey, Lebanon, Iraq. 6.7 million people have been displaced internally, are refugees internally, and hundreds of thousands of humans have lost their lives in Syria in this period of time. And today we want to offer our embodied witnessing presence to this situation. And as always, we practice our instrument, to fine-tune our body instrument, and to be in a space of self-care, meaning that we precisely sense how we are, where in us we encounter edges, where in our nervous system we find that, where we contract, where we close off, where we go into absence, because so much is being touched inside of us. But also to notice the spaces where we can stay in resonance and where can we stay related. Where are we able to open our capacity to relate that much that we are able to deeply allow a space to Ibrahim and Moawi inside of us, so they become part of our internal world and we become part of their internal world. Much of the violence and the pain, which also is part of the process of integration and fleeing, happens because we're not fully able to relate to each other, because there is no space inside of us for each other. Having said that, I would first like to invite us all to fine-tune our bodies, those wonderful instruments, and that we do this together. And part of this meditation or attunement will be that we attune with each other, because each of our bodies and each of our nervous systems receives force and power through the coherence in our group. Meaning that before we go into this meditation, you might want to switch to gallery view. I'm just going to remove the spotlight from myself and invite us to all go to gallery view and notice that none of us is here on their own today. Luz, you opened, you raised your hand. Is there a reason you did that, or did you? Okay. I am deeply grateful that we are here today with Professor Dr. Kazuma Matoba. I myself am originally from South Africa. I also lived in Germany for quite a while, but German is not my mother tongue, neither is English. My native tongue is Afrikaans. And yes, it's good that many of us move between different cultures, and Professor Dr. Kazuma Motoba was born in Kobe in Japan. He studied in Tokyo and received his PhD in Duisburg in Germany, and he himself had to learn to integrate into German society and has himself been through this experience. Kazuma researches in communication science at Witten-Herdecke University, and he also leads a research project that he supports in the Academy of Inner Science with Thomas Hübel. And in this role, he collaborates closely with the Pocket Project and has been researching for many years the practice and the method of global social witnessing. And Ibrahim Alotman from Syria. Hello, Ibrahim. Maybe we can also bring you into the spotlight. So Ibrahim Alotman has studied medicine, has studied to be a doctor in Witten in Germany. And we can feel softly what a journey it was for you to come from Syria as a refugee and then to really study medicine. And Moawi Fares from Syria. came to a similar time as Ibrahim did to Germany. Both came to Germany in October 2015, and Mowi studies pharmacology at the university in Bochum in Germany. And it is a great honor and joy for us to have you here today. And Kazuma has directly collaborated with Ibrahim and knows Mowi. So therefore, I'm handing over to you, Kazuma. Thank you for being here. And Kazuma will be in a dialogue with Ibrahim and Mowi and will in that way support us to see and hear you deeper. Kazuma says, thank you, Kosha. My name is Kazuma Matoba. I'm a professor for communication science and also intercultural education at the University of Witten-Herdecke, and I also focus on collective trauma and global social witnessing, which is what we're talking about today. My story and the story of Ibrahim and the story of Moawi, like our joint history, began at about the same time in 2015. Of course, we all had lives before that, me for a longer time, and Ibrahim and Moawi not as long as me. But our joint story began in 2015. I was in Munich, Germany. Back then, I was professor for communication science at the military university in Munich, and I was, which is for the education of military officials. And in September, or actually just before that, in August, huge waves of refugees from Syria arrived. That was just after our back then Chancellor Merkel said, we will make that and you are welcome. And such a huge wave of refugees from Syria came by train, by car, and most of the time walking, coming through Austria to Munich. And I was in Munich. And I myself was witnessing what's happening in Munich. And I went to the Munich main train station and I was so shocked in September 2015 that a huge train station building was divided into two parts, and half of it was refugees. The reason being that the refugees at the time were 1,000 people a day. They were arriving by train from Austria, and the other half of the people were people coming for the Oktoberfest, for the beer festival, wearing traditional Bavarian clothing. And the people arriving for the beer festival, most of them were Germans or Europeans, and they didn't want to see what happens in the other half of the train station. Most of those going to the beer festivals did not want to see what's happening in the world, even though it was right next to them. And I was so deeply shocked. This is the reality of the world, and this is the reality of Germany. And later, when Ibrahim also came from Munich and to Witten-Herdecke, I spoke to him about that, and we noticed that at the same time Ibrahim was also in Munich. He was also part of this huge wave of refugees from Syria who arrived to Munich. And after this huge wave, so that was October and November in 2015, I immediately decided to provide workshops for refugees and with refugees. And I spoke to the students of the military academy, and we together jointly witnessed what is happening in the world and what is happening in Munich. This was my first global social witnessing project with my students, and ever since then I've always been doing global social witnessing projects. Yes, so Ibrahim, this is how our joint story began in 2015, and about a year back I interviewed you for our European Erasmus project, and you gave us your long and painful story, how you arrived from your home country to Witten. Unfortunately, today our time is limited. In this process of your journey from your home country in 2015 up to the present, now in 2023, what do you want to share with the people in Europe from your experiences? What is there that you're burning to express today? Ibrahim says, well, first of all, thank you so much for inviting me, and I'm really happy to be here. I really loved how Kosha introduced the call and told us that none of us is here alone today. I really loved feeling that inside of me, and to really notice that I'm not here on my own. But sometimes when I sit on my own and reflect, I see that I'm not alone, but other refugees are. What's important to me is to share with many people living in Europe that maybe they can take more time for their fellow humans. At the end of the day, we are all humans, and there's so much more that we have in common with each other than with other beings, and it's just one planet. And most people didn't produce their situation. I really didn't choose where I grew up, where I was born, what language I speak, what my looks are, and many others. I would compare that. It's not a fair comparison, but it's the truth. Those who are from Western Europe have the privilege to have grown up in a country that gave them education. And when I compare to them, I find that they have been so blessed, and they have so many resources available to them and so many opportunities, and they're not even aware of it because they don't know it any other way. So what I would like to encourage, or what I would like to say, is that maybe they could also extend their care to other people, to their fellow humans, to wake up. And sometimes all that's needed, what's sufficient, is to say, this is a human being just like me, and I don't want to discriminate against them because it's not their fault. Kazuma says, well, thank you. That's beautiful. And you have been through a rough journey, but the journey continues. And what was the lowest point, the hardest part of your journey, and the most beautiful part of your journey? If you can, would you briefly describe what was the most beautiful and the hardest part of your journey? Ibrahim says, do you refer to my fleeing to Germany? Kazuma says yes. So Ibrahim says, well, I would say globally speaking, this is a civil war. And most Syrians experience it this way. And for me, what happened is that I'm from Raqqa. At the time when I came to Germany, or the reason why I left or decided to left, it was part of the Islamic State. And at the time, after I finished high school, I had started studying to become a nurse. And then at the time there were no more schools and universities, and I volunteered in the emergency room in the for the IS regime. And the main reason why I left was the Islamic State, and that's a point where I think it's a good thing I did that. Hadn't I done it, I'm not sure if I would still be alive today, because I lived under that regime and it was so painful. And I noticed that they don't represent my religion, the religion that I really love, but they're using the religion to as an excuse for their power, their desire for power. And well, I don't think we've got enough time to notice many details, but what I can say is that people weren't recognized as human beings, and they were saying that only they are right, and that is wrong, because all people are right. And I thought and reflected for a long time what to do, and I didn't want to collaborate with them, and that made it difficult for me because they started searching for me, and at some point I had to leave the hospital and stay at home, but they persecuted me and were looking for me in my street. And that was the moment when my parents were really scared, and I was too, which you can probably understand if you noticed what the Islamic State used to do. So I decided to do this and to leave Syria. So that was the main reason. Kazuma says thank you. So every person has their own integration process and integration story. And my story and process of integration is, of course, not something we can compare to yours, as far as the Islamic State and trauma are part of the story. I don't want to go into that because maybe that's too gruesome. But in spite of this trauma and cruelty, now you're studying at the University of Witten-Herdecke. You're even studying medicine. And I love asking this. Would you say you're well integrated in German society? Ibrahim says, well, I would say, yeah, definitely. Germany is my new home. I'm not planning to go back. I might be dreaming and planning that I would want to live abroad. But I noticed that when I leave Germany, I really miss my home. I also, when I talk about Germany, I say us, and when I say us, I mean us Germans. I would say I'm really well integrated. So firstly, I learned the language and I accepted the society and I comply with the rules. I love rules and laws. You wouldn't believe that, but sometimes I really get angry and sad when my friends, like my Syrian friends, turn up late or don't turn up at all. And Maui can also confirm that the Germans who are law abiding. And I can make sense of my life. And I always manage to go through anything I accept and then manage. Acceptance is really important, and I was really happy when I arrived to Germany. I arrived in southern Germany, first to Munich, then to Baden-Württemberg. I was taken there and spent the first 2 years in Freiburg in southern Germany. And I noticed how important it is to stand together and to accept others, and not to think, oh, just us are right or just them are right. Really, what I noticed when I left Syria, I was looking for safety, and I would probably have found safety in many other countries, but the problem was, or is, that not everybody receives it, and in most cases you can't choose. So I'm really happy that Chancellor Merkel back then said, we can make it, we can do this. I was one of those who sat at the Hungarian border in September and was let in, and I didn't know while I was on the journey. And only after I arrived, I heard about it, and this has given me a lot of strength. And well, returning to integration, since I had worked in the emergency room, I noticed that I have always been interested in helping people in this way. And I really deeply wanted to study medicine, but well, my grades at school were not good enough. And being a foreigner, it was really much more difficult. Really, you can't enter the university. It's even hard for German passport holders. But I couldn't stop thinking about it, and I really, really wanted to do it. So I volunteered in the social sector for a whole year, and noticed that it still wasn't sufficient, even though I had learned the German language well. So I went from Freiburg to Heidelberg to do an apprenticeship in the medical sector, and then worked in that area, and noticed how important it is to be educated. My family originally was not well educated. They were working class, but my parents really desired for me to study because they hadn't. And this is something that I clearly realized when I was in Heidelberg. And it's an instrument. I would say that the fact that today our weapon is the pen or the pencil, and we can use that to fight, and we don't need to carry other weapons around with us. And that supported me. And right after that apprenticeship, I applied at the university because I knew that it's the right university for me, and that's something that's been confirmed. I'm in the 4th year, and I can see the difference comparing to other universities, even though it was hard to leave southern Germany and move to Witten. And well, due to the fact that I've moved quite a few times, that gives you a certain level of trauma, because each time you have to get used to a new place. And I left something. I left my home, and I lost hope that it will ever be reconstructed, and I don't think I will ever return. But somehow I managed to make Germany my new home. And now that I'm thinking that, I can think that the whole world could be my home. And well, referring back to integration, I would say that I also managed to obtain the German citizenship. And I feel like a German. Kazuma says, I haven't yet obtained the German citizenship. Ibrahim says, yeah. And yeah, talking about integration, I don't think there's any more integration needed in my case because I feel like I'm a German. Kazuma says, I would later talk to you again with another question. But what you said is that the pen, the pencil are new weapons. For me as a scientist, this is really so. And we can really make this world a better place using the pen. And Maui, you also are studying or have finished studying. And I would say for you too, the pen is a weapon. And tell us about your story and what would you like to tell the people in Europe today about your journey? I came as a child on my own to Germany. So this is a category of refugees when they're traveling without their parents or any adults. I was about 16 years old. So I want to correct. I don't live in Bochum. I live in Düsseldorf. Kosha says, sorry that I said Bochum. It's Düsseldorf. Apologies for that. And Anna is just telling us you're talking too fast for Melanie. You're German. You speak is twice as fast as Ibrahim's German. Ibrahim says, yeah, I tried to speak slowly. Maui says, I came to Germany in 2016 without my parents, without my family. I also work due to the fact that I arrived on my own without adults. I also engaged in volunteering works with refugees, and I now also work for child refugees who come to Essen on their own without adults. I know exactly what problems they face, what hindrances they face. We are the first point of contact for them. And I have to say, yes, I did this too. I did this journey through Turkey, walking through all those European countries, and now I see in the kids' faces that I witness at work that it's really rough what they go through. I hear hundreds of stories of that the kids tell us each week. And what they also told us about the Oktoberfest, it's still happening. It's true, and it's still happening. Every day we receive children who made their way here. They've gone through so much. They're traumatized. They lost orientation. They don't know why they're here, and they forgot what they want. They don't know what they want because they've been through too much. And I go out on the street and I see some kind of festivity or party, and nobody cares about them. They really go through difficult journeys and are still facing difficulties. And Moawi, I'm trying to, through my volunteering and through my work, to make this a little easier for them so they have nice experiences without their families, and so they can find some orientation. Kazuma says, and if I may ask you, Have your parents meanwhile come to Germany? Maui says, no, unfortunately, they haven't. I came on my own. I do have a legal right to bring my family. However, the asylum process took so long that I turned 18, so I lost that legal right. Kazuma says, okay, so when did you last see your parents? Maui says, my mother about 12 years ago. Last week, finally, after I received my German passport, I visited her in Turkey and I saw her last week, finally. My dad, it's been 8 years. Kazuma says, and so just as Ibrahim, you have the German citizenship. Wawi says, yes, finally, I do have the German citizenship. Kazuma says, so that means that with this status, you are integrated into German society, but an integration process is always an individual process and it's independent from the passport and the citizenship. Would you say you are well integrated in Germany? Maui says, yes, I have my own definition of what it means to be integrated. I've kept some values from my original home country, which I value. And I also have some German values that I received in addition and that I embraced. And I find that integration is not only about learning the language, but it's also about societal and about home. And now when I come back from a holiday, say from Turkey or a country that is close to my original home, I also feel at home. I have family or friends, and they are like my family, and I have a good time with them, and it feels like a home, similar to when I'm in Syria, and that is what I call integration. Kazuma says, yes, this is maybe similar to my integration process. I would say it's always a two-sided process. We don't want to just do a one-sided process. We also want the other side to integrate into the new culture. In this process, we also lose things and we keep things, and we want to keep things. And in your integration process, or regarding to your integration process, what do you not want to lose? Maui says, what I don't want to lose is my religion, the hospitality that's part of the Arabic culture, the generosity. I want to make sure I keep that. I don't want to lose that. I find that is a good thing for your fellow humans or the people around me. And this is something and something that I gained from the German culture is their discipline. Hard to pronounce the word discipline, and their punctuality, their precision. Yeah, and I find that even though it wasn't a conscious process, I unconsciously adopted that. Because I have a lot of contact with German people at the university. Kazuma says, and in this process of integration, you sometimes also have to leave things and you have to let go of things. What did you unfortunately lose? Maui says, my family, that's for sure. The sense of having a family, the sense of really having a home. Yeah, last week I saw my mother I was in this family atmosphere that I hadn't experienced for 8 years, and I hadn't experienced and sensed it. That's something I really lost. The experience that somebody waits for me at home, that somebody thinks of me, is something I completely lost. And thinking just about yourself, Kazuma says, thank you. And yes, I'm coming back to you again, Ibrahim. I met you a year ago in my global social witnessing lesson. And back at the military university in Munich, I was doing the global social witnessing, and now I'm also doing this at the university in Witten, and I go to Calais with my students, which is like a bordering city between England and France by the Channel. And Calais is a small port city right by the sea, right across England. And there is this so-called Calais jungle. And back then in 2015 and 2017, there were some 3,000 illegal refugees from Syria who had arrived through Germany to Calais, and they were waiting to get to England with small boats, and the French government did not approve of these refugee camps and repeatedly destroyed them. But in spite of that, so many illegal refugees kept arriving without documentation, without paperwork or passports, because they wanted to go to England. And I went there with my university students twice a year, and we were working for an NGO, and we were cooking for the refugees, and in the evening we were meditating and reflecting and doing global social witnessing to see about what was happening. And Ibrahim, you applied for one of those trips, and I saw your name, Ibrahim, and I was like, oh, this is an Arabic name. And then I met you, and I first saw you, and I asked you where you're from, and you said you're from Syria. And I asked, oh, so 2015, and you confirmed. And I told you what this was about, our trip was about, and asked you if you were really prepared to go there. It's dangerous, and you will see refugees from Syria, from your country. Is that okay for you? I don't want you to be re-traumatized by exposing yourself to seeing people in that situation and seeing people from Syria. And you said you were ready. And what was your motivation to be there? And what did you learn from this trip to Calais? Ibrahim says, yeah, well, I fully agree with you that I did think a lot about that before I applied for that trip. But I really wanted to see the other side, because I myself had done this. I was doing this journey and slept on the street in a tent, had cold nights, and I wanted to see if my perspective changes when I come wearing warm clothing and with official papers that allowed me to stay. So first of all, I deeply thank you for having taken me on the trip, and that I could take part in this project. I saw a lot and saw the refugees again and again, thought these are my fellow humans, and I felt very close to them. I saw many Syrians, but most of them were from other countries. I don't even know. They were from Somalia, from Sudan, and from many other countries. But I have to say, and this is a story I still keep on telling because I took it with me when I interacted with someone from Africa. I think it was Eritrea, and Kazuma confirms it was Eritrea. He spent 11 years in Switzerland, living there, working there, and wanted to then also go to the UK. And I didn't quite understand, and I was asking why. And he said, well, here I don't receive papers. And I looked right at my cell phone and I thought, this is not okay. You are here now. You may not be allowed to stay here forever, but and it's just about 100 kilometers, but it's a rough 100 kilometers. But if you did that, you would receive what you're not receiving here. He spoke perfect German. He had been working. He was really well. He was really able to converse well with me and my friend who was there with me. It didn't feel like he was very different from us because he had lived there for 11 years. Kazuma says that was 11 years in Switzerland, right? So he speaks the Swiss accent. And yeah, Ibrahim confirms he did. And I can't get that story out of my mind. Why does he not receive that which he gets in the UK? Why doesn't he get it here if he shows that he makes an effort to integrate and that he is a human being? And I learned so much, but I gotta say, this is a little sad for me. It was probably perceived differently by each and every participant of the project, and they had contacts with refugees, and most of them had not been through that experience. They hadn't done the journey, but I had, so my perception was different. And for them, it was sad, but then they come back home and have warm water. And well, it was cold, it was November. But when you have warm water at home, then for most of them, it ends there. We all know that. We see the news briefly and it talks about refugees sleeping out there, and you get sad and you're moved. And then we sleep and we wake up the next day, and I would assume that most people don't talk about it because it's kind of far away and they think it's not their responsibility. And I just find it sad that after 7 years, I had the same experience, but being on the other side. Now it's been 8 years. 2015, I also spent nights outside in Greece, just like them in Calais. And then I took the trip to Calais with you, Kazuma. And I thought, no, it's not gonna be that bad anymore. Not nowadays. They will have learned. Back then in the EU, they weren't prepared, and it happened so suddenly. And that's why the situation was so rough. But unfortunately, not much has changed. So in the project where we worked for Care for Calais for 2 days and worked in the refugee kitchen for 2 days, and one day we spent, and I'm so grateful you made this possible for us. we just went out on the street and tried to get in touch with refugees. It was difficult to even approach anyone and speak to them because many of them were scared. But it was beautiful to have this opportunity to ask them, to approach people and ask them. And actually, to me, it wasn't that interesting to speak to refugees and ask them how they were feeling. But what I found really good was to ask the locals. We went to a mall and asked people, French people, says Kazuma. Ibrahim confirms. Residents of Calais, so French people. And I just noticed that they're not interested in their fellow humans. And I remember one story where Sophia was asking the cashier, asking whether she was in touch with refugees, and the lady said, yeah, and I have 2 of them at home. And the question was, so how did they arrive? And she said, well, she was just helping. And I asked, so may I ask where you're from? Because I'm really interested. Where are the refugees from that are staying with you? And she says, yeah, sure, they're from Ukraine. And I asked, okay, and what about the other refugees? And to her, it was clear, well, Ukrainians are our fellow humans. It's a European country, but all the others, they're different. So to her, she immediately created different classes and ranks of refugees. Kazuma says, yeah, exactly. Moawi? Moawi says, in terms of ranks among refugees. Kazuma says someone has to mute. Moawi says, yes, it's really true that there's different classes, ranks of refugees. It's very clear there where I work with refugees. I work with kids from Afghanistan, from Somalia and Ukraine. And I have to teach them that Germany is a just country, a country with justice. And there's the German constitution that gives us justice. But a Ukrainian child can go right to school, has an easy time receiving their papers. But the kids from Syria, from Somalia, from Afghanistan, for them, it's not possible. They wait months, sometimes years, before they can go to school, before they receive their rights to stay. They lose their legal rights to bring their families because they turn 18. Most of them lose that right to bring their family because the process of granting the papers takes a lot longer than it does with refugees from other countries. And this is so rough, especially since they're children and they should have the same rights as others. Kazuma says, may I? I feel your irritation clearly, and I too feel very irritated when we hear this. Today, we also were talking with our group, with Kosha, and we heard this story that there's a hierarchy between or among refugees or people who came here as refugees. And maybe tomorrow we can also talk about it, because tomorrow we will address Ukraine. And maybe after this series of 3 calls, we can talk about why do we have hierarchies? Why do we have this structure that maybe has been in existence for 3,000 or 4,000 years? And this is a very sad story that we want to overcome. we somehow were born into a traumatized society, into a traumatized world. So we keep repeating the same history for 3,000 or 4,000 years. That's not my theory. That's what Thomas Hübel says. Kosha, how about opening the space? Kosha says, yeah, that sounds like a good idea, and maybe it's also beautiful. I noticed that I feel very touched, Moe, when you talked about what you lost and this deep rooting in being at home and someone, not just someone, but your mother, your father, were waiting for you. People who deeply know you and love you, where you know you belong, you're deeply loved and seen. And so that we just take more time to witness what this means for the two of you. I find that you both spoke so courageously about this, about how you integrate, and you used the right expressions, the political correctness as well, but that which you lost in your lives deeply touches me. I also have a son. I'm a mother, and I see you, and I want to also give space to this loss and this grief on a very human level. And maybe also dedicate a moment to your mothers and fathers and to how much they love you and how much they miss you, and also how proud they are of you. And at the same time, this huge loss and their love for you. May this love here be here in this space with us and with you. And thanking you hugely that you are here with us with all this beauty. And what's the word for dignity in German? Maybe one of you knows. Ibrahim says dignity. Oh, the German word is Würde. Yeah, Würde. Great. You bring so much dignity. And thank you for your beauty, your dignity, the warmth of your hearts. And thank you, Kazuma, for your pure, simple, and deep way of opening these spaces and creating spaces for students. And Bob is saying here, thank you for your anger also. And others were saying that in the chat as well. One of them was addressing me directly, that people found that important. You said that, Ibrahim, that you feel globally at home, and people wrote, we are not just from Germany here, we're from many different countries in the world, and we're listening to you and seeing you, and we're with you. That's very beautiful. Thank you so much, says Ibrahim. And Kosha says, yeah, and maybe we can open the space to hear some more voices. We're opening the space for everyone here. And you can speak, whether you would like to speak in English or in German. But so we can make sure we hear some voices from this space. So I will, yeah. Salal also says that she's so grateful that you spoke so openly about the separation that these hierarchies create. So would any of you like to share? Yeah, Claude, we'll just bring you into the spotlight as well.
Well, I am very grateful that I'm here today. And I'm very grateful from listening to both of you and to Kazuma. So I'm French. I'm from the Caribbean, but I live in Paris. And maybe what I want to share is that being here, it's helping me to really feel what's happening. I know what's happening. I know we're not welcoming migrants in France, you know. I know about Calais, the Calais jungle, and also, I mean, in Paris, sometimes I can see, you know, I can see some people walking and I can recognize that they probably haven't been here for a long time because of, yeah, signs, you know. And it's, yeah. So I know it, and I know I don't agree with the way we do things. And it's like being here. You know, I was crying a lot when I was listening to you because I was feeling the pain of losing your home, of you know, I know the story, but I was feeling it. And actually, I kind of realized that maybe the reason why I'm not doing a lot because I don't want to feel the pain. Yeah. So I'm grateful in a strange way for allowing me to feel the pain.
Yeah, and maybe you can allow all of us to just be with you for a moment, Claude, as you really feel this pain in your heart and you're sharing it and you're bringing it here right now with a lot of simplicity and openness and vulnerability. And I have a sense that there's a lot of resonance with that here in our space. Very soft.
Mm. Yeah, there is this realization that really the pain needs to be felt, and also that I won't die from it. It's kind of like I'm always shying away because I'm afraid that I won't survive the pain.
Yeah. Yeah, and you know, there's also beauty of when we allow ourselves to feel more, life comes more alive in us. And I'm sure that there's many points in your own history and your own ancestry that are touched by the topics. Exactly. So it goes deep, you know.
You know, Caribbean, my father is Black, so it's a lineage of slaves. And there was like a forced migration. I mean, the trades of bringing the Black bodies across the ocean. So, yeah.
Yeah, and this is, I think, for many people, this is part of, you know, when it becomes difficult to be with the pain because it's a pain in our own lineage that is touched. So then we can transform a distance to a real closeness when we allow all of that to be here. But it takes a lot of courage and carefulness also, you know. Yeah. Yeah, thank you so much, Claude. Thank you for your humanity and your love. And your soft heart that you bring here today.
Yes, thank you for your gentleness, Kosha.
Yeah, is it okay for you now?
Yeah, it's good. And thank you again to Ibrahim and I don't know how to pronounce the name. Mao. I'm sorry.
Maui is what I learned. But yeah. Yeah. Thank you. And I could just feel Claude sending you both, Ibrahim and Maui, her love.
I notice how when I allow this topic to touch me more closely, how shaky everything becomes and how many layers there are of how I'm being touched and connected, interwoven, and also aspects come in of, am I doing enough? Or where is it okay for me to say, I can't manage in terms of all of the work needed for integration and support? And I myself work in the medical sector. And when the refugees came in waves, and I noticed how friends of mine were really taking care of siblings who had arrived and were really doing so much for them and helping them integrate into a village society. I was there saying, I can't do it. I don't have the capacity. I'm a single mother and an employer and all sorts of other things. And in addition, struggles with my family and all those other things. And at the same time, when I was with that other family, with at least with one of them, not so much with their sister, and then we also had some contact, but it's not that I was really involved in supporting their integration. And to some extent, I was also keeping a distance from the work that was needed here in the village because I didn't have the capacity. And there is the question, how and where am I responsible, or should I be doing more? What could my contribution be when I see that refugees arrive and I see their pain, their illnesses that arise from their emotional issues, and they come and they ask me what to do about their sickness, and I say, well, that what you really need is something I can't give you because that's not my profession. And there is the lack in terms of resources. And then next I get to a point where I ask, what do I have to give, or where can I say I can't? When for example, I'm looking for employees, and then people come applying for jobs, and I worry that because of cultural differences in my very small business will have tensions that I'm not able to hold, even though I feel I would really like to give them employment, but I notice my own limitations, and this touches me deeply, and I'm asking myself the question. So in the way I see it or imagine it, in should I be able to do all of this? And what does it mean? Is this really a way of responding, or is it also an appropriate response to take care of myself when I notice I can't do more than this? Kosha says, I have a question for you, Doris, because I think it's not just your asking yourself, what are my limitations? How do I take care of myself? What is my contribution? And in global social witnessing, the dream that we have is that out of a deeper connection with each other, we will know more about what is my contribution and what is not my contribution. But I wonder, how is your heart right now? Right now, when you talk about it, how are you feeling in your heart? Yeah, right. Doris says, well, the first answer that comes up, or the superficial answer, is I'm feeling abandoned. Kosha says, and my question when I listen to you is I feel a longing in you, a longing for more connection, and that you feel you should be doing more. And then I think it could be very easy that we can separate from something, while there is really so much longing and so much feeling, and you are representative for many of us in this dilemma and this pain. And if we allow for this to be here, that you feel a longing and are looking for your way with that. And maybe it's okay if I just say that right now. I don't know if that feels supportive to you right now, but we start to really think from our head, especially when we feel guilty. We're using our mind and we're saying this is possible and this isn't, but then the heart feels abandoned, because in your heart there's love and care. Doris says, yeah, I notice I can't integrate those two things. There's something like, Kosha says, yeah, exactly. Yeah. Yeah, and this not knowing, but somehow given more space for your heart, more softness for your heart, so this can be, and that you don't have, there's nothing you have to do, nothing you must do. Thank you for sharing yourself and taking the space. And it is a space of not knowing, because everything you described, this feeling of overwhelm, is something I can understand very well. And if all of this is allowed to be, and your heart can still have this longing for connection, and maybe Ibrahim and Moe, maybe one of you would like to say something, even to Doris, just as we're finishing. Ibrahim says, okay, I'll do it. I understand you very well. I understand this very well. And we ourselves sometimes don't know how we can contribute and help. None of us have the capacity for everything and everyone. It is a difficult issue. And when well, today you can be looking at refugees and tomorrow at the climate and then the day after at something else. And it's difficult. But I believe, and I really believe, that if now we in our generation and the next generation to come, we do little things, little contributions, if all of us give a small contribution, even if we just sit, but if we just sit and try not to do anything, then nothing changes. But maybe just the thoughts can help sometimes, and talking to your friends about this issue, and then maybe one of your friends or another of your friends might also notice they feel responsible and they want to contribute. Sometimes we don't all have to work on this. Sometimes it's sufficient if one of us builds the house and the other one says, well, take this brick here and that brick there. So I would say we're collecting bricks, and we hope the engineer will come and tell us how to align the bricks. We can't do it on our own, but if we collaborate, we can do it. And I feel it is our responsibility, and we can sorry, I didn't catch that. This is a problem that's been existing for a long time if you look at history, but we want to change it. I really love this sentence, this quote. We have not inherited the earth from our parents, but have borrowed it from our children. And I really think this is what it is. We only have one planet so far. We're not aware of any other Earth. We're all the same. And if we manage to be just with each other, then maybe our children will later manage to improve this. And I really understand your thoughts very well. And I know it's very difficult to be managing yourself. You can't do it on your own. We have to do it together. And therefore, when Kazuma offered the global social witnessing, what most spoke to me was the word global. It's about global. It's about the entire Earth. We're not dividing the Earth using, for example, the equator to talk about the northern hemisphere and the southern hemisphere. This is political, and we don't want that. And we have an influence on politics. And without the people, there is no state. Osha says, oh, thank you. It feels like we're right in the middle of it all. Doris, thank you. I'm also thinking about the quote by Hermann Hesse. Let's live with the unanswered questions. Let's respect the questions and the space that is needed. And we arrived at the end of the time for our call. And Doris, thank you. Claude, thank you. Karen and Ariane, I'm sorry we haven't had time to hear you. And Kazuma, huge thanks to you and enormous thanks to Ibrahim and Muawi. And as always, it feels like we made new friends. And I hope and desire that this community, that we can accompany each other, that we that we can accompany you. Thank you for everything you shared with us today so generously. It was like the generous hospitality that you talked about, Moe, that you shared with us and you allowed us to experience. And Kazuma, thank you for the many bridges that you build. And having said that, I would like to really build the bridge, the transition to tomorrow when we will talk about Ukraine. Daria has been with us these days from Kiev, right from the war zones where bombs fall every day. She was here and listened to how other refugees, the kind of experiences they have with Ukrainian refugees, and it breaks her heart. And it's so hard to hear. So the Ukrainian refugees arrive because they need to flee, and then they are part of this injustice, and they need to experience that, and that's not easy. And this is something we want to offer space to tomorrow, and also the situation that young people are in the Ukraine and as refugees. And we will be happy to see you all tomorrow. We will be very, very happy to see you back tomorrow. And huge thanks for the interpretation. Thank you, Melanie, and for the tech hosting. Thank you, Sunita, and to everyone in the team, all of those who are holding the space in the background. Thank you, Anna. Thank you, Daria. Thank you, Kazuma. Thank you, Ibrahim and Maui. And may our blessing and our love be with you. May you be well. May you be happy. May you be safe. Thank you.